The Krellin sovereignty had a filing system older than most species in the known galaxy. That was how they lost, not through fire, not through battle, through paperwork. Kale pulled a mining registry filed 847 days ago from the dust-covered drawer marked *Veth7. His claws clicked against each other as he worked. Tick, tick, tick. A soft sound his supervisor never noticed because his supervisor had stopped listening to anything related to Sector 0 years ago. The power signatures on the registry didn't match the classification. Mining equipment didn't pulse like that. Mining equipment didn't hold a steady charge for 847 days. Mining equipment didn't have heat signatures consistent with sovereignty-heavy cruisers from 200 cycles ago. But the file had been stamped closed, no further review by a supervisor who had retired 400 cycles ago and whose name no one in the department remembered anymore. The stamp was faded. The ink had bled into the paper. The file had been closed for so long that the paper had turned yellow at the edges. The massacre at Cinder Ridge sat in the same drawer. 283 dead, 31 children. A teacher named Mina Hassan who had been 7 months pregnant and had still hidden 12 children in the maintenance shafts before the Krellin patrols found her. The Sovereignty's official report was brief. It said, "Standard resource dispute, non-priority species, no further investigation recommended." It was signed by High Marshal Vornak himself. He had not read the report. He had signed it between breakfast and his morning briefing. The whole thing had taken 11 seconds. The Krellin had a word for species they considered beneath notice. Veth, background noise, static, the hum of a ship's engine, the buzz of a dying light, the sound of rain on a metal roof, things you heard but never listened to, things you filed and forgot. Humanity was filed under Veth7, the lowest possible priority on the Sovereignty's 14-tier classification system. The drawer containing their files hadn't been opened in 800 days. Dust had settled on the folder. The dust was thick enough to write in. Kale pulled the registry again. His claws ticked faster now. He had been an archivist for 102 cycles. He had seen a lot of strange files. He had never seen power signatures like these. The signatures didn't match mining equipment. They matched sovereignty-heavy cruisers from 200 cycles ago, a class the Krellin had retired because no one could crack its stealth shroud. That class had been called Unseen. The name was not ironic. The ships had simply vanished from the records one day. No explanation, no retirement ceremony, no decommissioning order, just a single line in the fleet manifest: class decommissioned, technology archived, do not request reactivation. Except the technology wasn't archived. Kale could see it on his screen. Active power signatures, 14 of them, sitting in the Krell Gap, hidden inside asteroids, waiting for something, waiting for someone, waiting for 847 days. His supervisor, Senior Archivist Thalen, looked up from his desk. His mandibles clicked once, a gesture Kale had learned meant evasion. Thalen was old. He was tired. He wanted to retire. He did not want to deal with files from a drawer no one had opened in 800 days. Stop chasing ghosts and file it under closed. But the signatures. Closed means closed. Thalen didn't look at the screen. He was reading something else, something more important. The vote to reclassify their territory passed in 11 minutes, between a sports recap and a cooking show. Do you understand what that means, Kale? That means no one in the entire sovereignty, not one admiral, not one council member, not one sensor operator, not one politician, thought humans were worth more than 11 minutes of attention. That's how seriously we take this species. Now close the drawer. Kale filed the registry, but he kept a copy. He kept it under his sleeping mat in the barracks. He read it at night when the lights were off and the other clerks were snoring. He read the power signatures. He read the 847-day gap between the filing date and the Cinder Ridge report. He read the name of the engineer who had submitted the original mining survey, Talwar. He didn't know what it meant yet, but his claws kept clicking. 847 days before Kale pulled that file from the dust-covered drawer, the Krellin sovereignty held 14 sectors. They had ruled for 2,800 cycles. Crushed 17 species, absorbed 11 conquered worlds, lost exactly 0 major engagements in their entire recorded history. Their doctrine was simple: show overwhelming force once and no one tests you for a generation. It had worked for 2,800 years. There was no reason to believe it would ever stop working. The sovereignty had never lost a war. The sovereignty had never lost a fleet. The sovereignty had never even lost a major battle. High Marshal Vornak had commanded the frontier fleet for 400 cycles. He had personally overseen the subjugation of 3 species. His gray-green scales flushed a deep, satisfied purple when he was pleased, which was often. His mandibles clicked in a specific rhythm when he lied. 1 click meant evasion. 2 clicks meant outright falsehood. He was not aware that anyone had noticed this pattern. No one had ever told him. No one had ever dared. He hadn't updated his threat assessment protocols in 200 cycles. He didn't need to. The sovereignty's enemies were dead or broken or paying tribute. New species appeared every few decades. They were always the same, loud at first, then quiet, then gone, then filed under Veth and forgotten. On the day of the Cinder Ridge massacre, Vornak sat in his command chair on the flagship Sovereign's Will. He was comfortable. He was well fed. He had just finished a breakfast of grilled Vurith eel and fermented fungus wine. He scrolled through casualty reports the way a farmer checks whether patterns, glancing, dismissing, moving on. Cinder Ridge, mining colony, 14 families, 283 souls. His mandibles clicked once. Evasion. Non-priority species, he said. Send the standard ultimatum. They have 60 days to evacuate. After that, their territory becomes resource zone. Mark it for clearance in the next cycle. Tell the mining guild they can start surveying in 90 days. Subcommander Vexus stood at the sensor station, 300 cycles old, amber scales that darkened to a deep brown when he was troubled. He was the only officer on the bridge who read the full reports. He was the only officer who ran the numbers twice. He was the only officer who asked questions. He was considered strange for this. High Marshal, Vexus's voice was quiet. He always spoke quietly. He had learned that loud officers got noticed and loud officers got transferred. He wanted to stay on the frontier fleet. He wanted to watch. I've run the scans of Sector 0 through the archive. There's a mining registry filed 847 days ago, 14 sites. They were classified as inactive barges, but the power signatures don't match. Don't match what, Subcommander? Vornak didn't look up. He was scrolling through the next report. Something about a trade dispute in Sector 12. Ghosts, space dust, your imagination. I've run the calibration 3 times, High Marshal. The sensors are not malfunctioning. Then run it a 4th time. Vornak's mandibles clicked twice. A lie. He knew the sensors were fine. He just didn't care. The humans have no warships. Their defense budget is 0.3% of their GDP. Their fleet hasn't left their home system in 70 years. You are seeing sensor ghosts. You are seeing what you want to see. I am seeing. You are seeing what you want to see. Vornak finally looked up. His scales flushed purple. His eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to a tone that made the junior officers on the bridge flinch. The humans are *Veth 7 *, Subcommander, background noise. You understand what that means. It means we do not waste bandwidth on them. It means we do not run 4th calibrations. It means we file the report and we close the drawer. Am I clear? Vexus said nothing. He saved the logs to a private drive. He had been saving logs to private drives for 200 cycles. He had a whole collection of files that his superiors had told him to close. He had been right about most of them, not all, but most. He would need these logs later. Commander Sanvi Talwar sat at the kitchen table of her rented cottage on Harvest 12. The dented metal cup was cool against her palm. The barley tea inside had gone cold 3 hours ago. She drank it anyway. She had always drunk cold tea. Her partner used to make fun of her for it. You're the only person I know, her partner used to say, who can take a hot drink and let it sit until it's undrinkable. The thumb-shaped dent on the left side pressed into her skin. Her late partner had gripped the cup during turbulence on their last flight together. 17 years ago, the flight had been rough. The cup had fallen from the table. The dent had stayed. She still felt it every morning. Some mornings she woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. The news flickered on the wall screen. Cinder Ridge. 283 dead. 31 children. A teacher named Mina Hassan. The Sovereignty's official report scrolled across the bottom of the screen in blocky Krellin letters. Standard resource dispute. Non-priority species. No further investigation recommended. Talwar set the cup down. The dent faced her. She touched it. She always touched it before a decision. It was a habit she had developed in the years after her partner died. Touch the dent, remember the promise, make the choice. She walked to the old terminal in the study. The faded blue enamel pin on her collar, her partner's insignia from a civilian cargo carrier called the Morning Star, caught the light from the flickering desk lamp. She touched that too. 2 touches, one for the dead, one for the promise. One for the woman who had taught her that some debts could never be paid, only passed forward. She typed 14 characters, the access code her partner had insisted on adding to every proposal, just in case someone forgets we exist. The response came back in 9 seconds. All 14 sites were still green. A neighbor knocked on the door, asked about the tomatoes. Talwar said they were coming in late. The neighbor said the rain had been good for the soil. The neighbor asked if she had seen the news about Cinder Ridge. Talwar said she had. The neighbor said it was a shame what happened to those people. The neighbor didn't know she was one of those people. The neighbor didn't know her partner had died in the same sector. The neighbor didn't know she was reactivating a hidden fleet. The neighbor didn't know about the 14 ships sleeping inside asteroids. The neighbor didn't know about the 847 days of waiting. Talwar picked up the phone. Fleet Command, this is Commander Talwar, retired. Reactivate my command codes and wake up the shipyard managers in Sector 0. Tell them the signal is steadfast regard. The voice on the other end paused. Commander, that protocol hasn't been. I know how long it's been, do it anyway. She hung up, poured herself another cup of cold barley tea, sat in the flickering light from the old terminal. Outside, the rain started again. She thought about the last time it had rained on Harvest 12. The day her partner left for the last time. The day she had promised to keep the cup, to keep the pin, to keep the access code alive, to keep the promise that someone would remember, to keep the debt moving forward. She thought about the 283 dead at Cinder Ridge. She thought about Mina Hassan, who had taught 31 children to read, to count, to remember, who had hidden 12 children in the maintenance shafts while the Krellin patrols searched the buildings above, who had been 7 months pregnant when they found her. She thought about the Krellin report, non-priority species. She touched the pin one more time. Not anymore, she said. 847 days ago, a young fleet engineer named Sanvi Talwar had filed a proposal. She was 27 years old. Her partner was still alive. The Morning Star was still flying. The dent in the metal cup was still fresh. The Krell Gap was rich in heavy metals. The asteroids were dense enough to hide inside. Her proposal was simple. Convert 14 mining sites into hidden shipyards, build warships inside the rock, wrap them in stealth shroud. Wait. The proposal was approved 33-18. The budget line read, Deep Space Resource Assessment, Sector 0. The word warship never appeared in the document. The word stealth never appeared. The word weapon never appeared. It was a mining proposal. That was all, just a mining proposal. Not one Krellin auditor had ever requested the supporting documents. Not one. For 847 days, the file had sat in the same drawer that Kale would eventually find. It had been stamped and filed and forgotten. The auditors had been too busy with more important sectors, with more important species, with more important paperwork. For 847 days, they built. The first warship came off the line in year 11, the 14th in year 24. Each ship was built inside its asteroid berth, wrapped in a stealth field that scattered standard Krellin sensor scans into inactive mining barge signatures. The crews rotated every 9 months. They told their families they were working deep space mining contracts. Some of them believed it. Some of them didn't. Some of them wrote letters they never sent. Some of them died before they could send them. Some of them died in accidents. Some of them died of old age. Some of them died never knowing what they had built. Commander Talwar had commanded the project for 14 years, 1 year for each hidden site, 1 year for each year of her partner's silence. Her partner had died in year 3. The Morning Star had been lost with all hands near the Krell Gap. The official report said pilot error. The unofficial report, the one Talwar had filed and sealed, said something else. Then she had retired, gone home, fixed the leaky faucet, planted tomatoes, waited. She had been waiting for 9 days since the Cinder Ridge transmission. At listening post H3, technician Pelmerak saw the signal at 03:41 station time. He was alone on the night shift. His partner had called in sick. The backup had not arrived. He had been awake for 19 hours. His hands were shaking from too much caffeine. He was not supposed to be alone. The regulations said 2 technicians must be present at all times. The regulations had been ignored for years. The signal came in on an emergency band. A band that had not been used in 800 days. A band that was supposed to be reserved for sovereignty distress calls only. It was not a weapon, it was not a threat. It was a single line of text on an open channel, repeated 3 times. This is Commander Talwar of the human vessel Steadfast Regard, commanding the Harvest Vanguard. We are coming home. Stand aside or be removed. Pelmerak's hands were burned. He had been holding a manual coupling open for 11 extra seconds, rerouting power to record the transmission. The coupling had shorted out. The metal had turned red, the skin on his palms had blistered. The smell of burned flesh filled the small listening post. He did not let go. He ran the signal through the translator. Human, standard syntax. The sender identification was a ship named Steadfast Regard. The coordinates were the Krell Gap. The asteroid field the Sovereignty had classified as inactive mining barges for 847 days. He called his commander. Sir, I'm receiving a human transmission on emergency bands. They're claiming a fleet. His commander, a 200-cycle veteran named Voron, laughed. Voron was asleep when the call came in. His voice was thick with sleep and annoyance. A fleet? The humans have 12 aging patrol craft and a museum piece they call a carrier. It's a distress signal. File it under low priority and get back to work. I've confirmed the source coordinates, sir. They're inside the asteroid belt. The same belt we filed under inactive barges 847 days ago. The signatures are consistent with sovereignty-heavy cruiser profiles. Then it's a mining accident or a sensor ghost or your imagination. Voron's mandibles clicked. Stop being weak, Pel, you're a technician. Act like one, go back to sleep. Pelmarek did not stop being weak. He saved the recording to 3 different drives. He burned his hands to save the recording. He wrapped his palms in a torn shirt and kept watching. And he watched the sensor display as 14 ghost signatures that had been listed as inactive mining barges for 847 days, began to move. At 0412 station time, the first asteroid cracked open. The Krellin listening post at H3 had a direct line of sight to Site 9. Pelmarek watched through the exterior camera as a 5.2-kilometer hull emerged from the rock. Stealth shroud dropped. Running lights blinked on. The name was painted on the bow in plain block letters, white on black, no ornament, no ceremony, just the name, Steadfast Regard. Behind it, Site 11 cracked open, then Site 3, then Site 7, then Site 1, then Site 14. In 11 minutes, all 14 ships had decloaked. They formed a single wall of steel 200 kilometers across facing the Krellin positions. 14 ships, 14 years of hidden work, 14 promises kept, 14 names painted on 14 bows. Steadfast Regard, Silent Promise, Last Light, Heavy Quiet, Red Dawn, Iron Memory, Steel Vow, Cold Harbor, Deep Wake, Far Reacher, Stone Keeper, Old Debt, Final Call, Harvest Home. Pelmarek counted them twice, then a third time. He sent a priority alert directly to High Marshal Vornak's flagship. The alert was ignored for 6 minutes. On the bridge of the Steadfast Regard, Commander Talwar stood with her hands behind her back. The dented metal cup was in her quarters. She had not touched it since the Decloaked sequence began. She had not slept in 26 hours. Her eyes were red. Her hands were steady. She had given exactly 3 orders in the past 26 hours. Begin Decloaked sequence. Hold fire until my command. Open a channel to the Krellin flagship. The channel opened. Talwar spoke. Her voice was so quiet that the bridge crew leaned forward to hear her. The Krellin translator had to amplify the signal by 400%. Her words were measured. Her tone was calm. She sounded like a teacher explaining something to a student who should have known better. High Marshal Vornak of the Krellin Sovereignty. This is Commander Samvi Talwar of the human vessel Steadfast Regard, commanding the Harvest Vanguard. You have 6 hours to cease all hostile actions against human settlements in Sector 0, withdraw your forces to Krellin space, and release any civilian prisoners taken from Cinder Ridge. There will not be a second warning. She closed the channel. The bridge was silent for 3 seconds. Then the communications officer spoke. Commander, they're laughing. I can hear them on the open channel. Talwar nodded. She had expected that. On the Sovereign's will, High Marshal Vornak was indeed laughing. His mandibles clicked in rhythm with his amusement. His scales flushed a deep, satisfied purple. He turned to his bridge crew, spreading his 4-fingered hands in a gesture of theatrical disbelief. 6 hours, they have 14 ships. We have 187. They are 847 days out of date. Their commander is a retired grandmother who drinks cold tea from a dented cup. He laughed again. The bridge crew laughed with him. Even the junior officers laughed. Even the helmsman laughed. Even the cook who had wandered onto the bridge to deliver breakfast laughed. Send a counteroffer, Vornak said, still chuckling. They have 1 hour to surrender. After that, we will burn every human settlement in the gap, every colony, every outpost, every cargo hauler, every farm, every school, every hospital. This is the only warning they will receive. Subcommander Vexus stood at the sensor station, watching the human formation. He had been watching for 11 minutes. He had not laughed. He had noticed something that made his amber scales darken to brown. High Marshal, Vexus's voice was barely audible over the laughter. Their formation, it's not a defensive posture. I've never seen anything like it. Vornak stopped laughing. What is it? Vexus pulled up the tactical overlay. The 14 human ships had arranged themselves in a geometric pattern, not squares, not wedges, not the standard defensive sphere that every species in the sector used. Something else. Something that took him another 4 minutes to recognize. They've already calculated firing solutions on every one of our command ships, High Marshal, every single one. The formation is optimized for simultaneous rail strikes on 12 priority targets. They could disable our entire command structure in a single volley. They could. Enough! Vornak's scales flushed dark purple. His mandibles clicked twice. A lie. You are seeing patterns where none exist. The humans are bluffing. It's what soft species do. They posture, they threaten, they fold. I have seen it 100 times. Vexus said nothing. He saved the sensor logs to his private drive. He would need them later. The 6 hours passed. On the bridge of the Steadfast Regard, Talwar sat in her command chair. The dented metal cup was in her hands, empty. She had not refilled it since the Decloaked. The thumb-shaped dent faced her palm. She touched it without thinking. Her tactical officer spoke. Commander, they've rejected the deadline. Their fleet is holding position. No change in posture. They're still laughing. How many civilian transports in the sector? 14, Commander. All mining colonies. None have evacuated. The Krellin fleet has not targeted them yet. Their sensors are focused on us. Talwar nodded. She had expected that too. She looked at the tactical display. 187 Krellin warships, 14 human ships. The math looked impossible. The math had looked impossible for 847 days. She touched the faded blue pin on her collar. Any change in their posture? Negative, Commander. They're still laughing. Open Channel is still broadcasting their bridge audio. They're making jokes about us, about you, about the cup. Let them laugh, Talwar said. At 5 hours and 59 minutes, Talwar received a final transmission from the Sovereign's will. It was 11 seconds long. We do not negotiate with non-priority species. Your deadline is rejected. Your fleet will be destroyed. Your worlds will burn. This is the last communication you will receive from the Krellin sovereignty. Talwar set down her cup. The dent faced the ceiling. She turned to the weapons officer. Target their command ships only. Confirm each target 3 times before firing. No civilian structures, no evacuation vessels, no surrendering crews. I want clean shots. I want surgical shots. I want them to know exactly what we did and exactly what we didn't do. Confirmed, Commander. Firing solutions locked. Targets confirmed. Safety interlocks engaged. Waiting for your mark. Talwar looked at the tactical display one more time. She touched the pin. Fire. In 9 seconds, the Harvest Vanguard fired 1 synchronized volley. 11 Krellin command ships ceased to exist. Not exploded, not burning, not drifting. Simply gone. The pale blue rail shots had cut through Krellin hull plating, a material designed to withstand asteroid impacts and directed energy weapons, the way a hot knife cuts through cold butter, the way a blade cuts through silk, the way silence cuts through laughter. The ship split, the 2 halves drifted apart. There were no secondary explosions. There was nothing left to explode. The tungsten rods had punched clean through, exited the other side, and kept going. They were still going. They would keep going for a very long time. Steadfast Regard fired at 05:59:47. For the next 9 seconds, nothing in the Krell gap existed except light. Not the pale blue of a dying star, not the amber of a sunrise over the sovereignty's home world. Something else, a color the Krellin language didn't have a word for because their species had never seen anything move that fast. The tungsten rods crossed 200,000 kilometers in less time than it takes a heart to beat twice. Each rod was the size of a child's arm. Each rod hit exactly where the targeting computers had calculated, not in the 847 days since Cinder Ridge, but in the 847 seconds after the ultimatum was delivered. The computers had been waiting. They had always been waiting. Every ship in the Harvest Vanguard had been running firing solutions for 847 days. They knew every Krellin ship's position, every blind spot, every shield frequency, every weak point in the hull plating. They had been patient. 11 Krellin command ships didn't explode. They simply stopped being ships. One moment they were there, 5.2 kilometers of sovereignty engineering, hull plating rated for asteroid impacts, shields tested against Verith rail cannons, weapons that had broken 17 species. The next moment they were confetti. Not red but gray-green, the color of Krellin scales, drifting apart in slow silence. The pieces spun in the void, catching the light from the distant sun, glittering like snow. High Marshal Vornak watched his flagship's forward section separate from its aft section. He watched his command chair tilt sideways. He watched his bridge crew float past him, their yellow eyes wide, their mandibles clicking in patterns no translator could decode because no translator had been programmed for "oh gods, we were wrong." He had time to think one thought before the emergency seals activated and the escape pod ejected. They waited not 6 hours, not 847 days. They waited until he laughed, and then they fired. The remaining 176 Krellin ships went silent, every channel, every frequency just static. Subcommander Vexus was the first to speak. High Marshal, they hit only the command ships, every single one, not one other vessel was touched. I'm reading 0 civilian casualties. 0 damage to our support vessels, 0 damage to the mining colonies. They could have killed us all. They chose not to. High Marshal Vornak stared at the display from his escape pod. His scales had gone pale gray. His mandibles were locked open. He had not blinked in 22 seconds. They could have killed us all, Vexus said quietly. Why did they not? The answer came 4 minutes later on an open channel. Commander Talwar's second transmission was shorter than the first. High Marshal Vornak, your command structure is gone. Your remaining ships are surrounded. You have 1 hour to order a full withdrawal from Sector 0. All human prisoners will be released to our care. All claims on human territory will be formally rescinded. This is not a negotiation. She paused, her voice already quiet dropped lower. 283 of our people died on Cinder Ridge. Every one of them was paid for in full with the ships we just destroyed. Not for pride, not for territory, for our dead. She closed the channel. On the Sovereign's Will's escape pod, Vornak sat in silence for 11 seconds. Then he gave the order to withdraw. Subcommander Vexus did not accompany the retreating fleet. He requested and was granted a meeting with Commander Talwar. They met on a cold hillside overlooking the ruins of Cinder Ridge. The rain had stopped. The sky was gray. The wind carried the smell of wet stone and burned metal. Vexus's amber scales shifted as he tried to find the right words. You could have destroyed all of us, he said finally. Your targeting solutions were complete. Every ship in our formation was within range. Every weapon system we had was offline within the first 3 seconds. You had us. Talwar nodded. She was holding her dented metal cup. It had water in it now, cold, from a stream she had passed on the way up the hill. The water was clean. The stream had been there for thousands of years. It would be there for thousands more. Yes. Why didn't you? Talwar looked at the ruins below them. The memorial stone was already being placed. 283 names would be carved into it. Mina Hassan. The 31 children, the 251 others. She knew most of the names. She had read them all. She had memorized them. She said them every night before she slept. Where we come from, she said, we have a saying. It is better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. We had the weapons. We did not need to use them all. That is the difference between us and the sovereignty. Vexus's mandibles clicked once softly. That is a philosophy. It's not a philosophy, it's just math. Talwar took a sip of water. We waited 847 days to show you what we built. We could have waited 847 more. We did not want to, but we could have. That is the part you should remember. 3 weeks passed. The Sovereignty's High Council held an emergency session. It lasted 11 hours. The vote was 31 to 14. They formally rescinded all claims on human territory. They offered formal apologies to the human government. They reassigned Sector 0 to protected status, no Krellin presence permitted. The Krellin Naval Academy carved a single line of text above the main entrance. It was not a slogan. It was a warning. It was carved in stone. It would not be forgotten. Silence is not the same thing as nothing. The Archival Corps reclassified Sector 0 from *Veth 7 to Observanda 1, requiring active monitoring. Kale, the junior clerk who had pulled the mining registry, was promoted to senior archivist. His new desk faced a window. He kept the copy of the file under his new sleeping mat. He read it every night. 14 old Earth Treaty relays lit up across the sector. Species that had signed non-aggression pacts with humanity and then quietly forgotten them found themselves reviewing the fine print. The Tavari Dominion returned 3 seized cargo ships. The Zeth Warlord canceled a planned raid without explanation. The Vurith Collective reopened diplomatic channels. The Vurith Collective, former conquest of the Sovereignty, sent an ambassador. She was pale blue, four-armed, with bioluminescent markings that pulsed when she spoke. She asked to see the memorial at Cinder Ridge. She asked to meet the woman with the dented cup. She asked to know the names of the dead. Talwar said yes to all 3. 6 days after the hillside meeting, the memorial at Cinder Ridge was completed. It was a simple stone wall, 40 meters long, polished smooth. 283 names were carved into it. The teacher Mina Hassan, the 31 children, the 251 others, miners, engineers, cooks, mechanics, medics, pilots, farmers, teachers, parents, children, friends. People who had come to the Krell Gap to build something new. People who had died because the Sovereignty filed them under non-priority. People who would not be forgotten. Commander Talwar stood before the wall. The dented metal cup was in her hands. It was empty. She had not refilled it. She read every name, slowly, aloud. Her voice was so quiet that the wind almost carried it away. When she finished, she turned to the small crowd behind her. Subcommander Vexus was there. So was Technician Pelmarak, his burned hands wrapped in fresh white bandages. So was the Vurath ambassador. So were the survivors of Cinder Ridge, the ones who had hidden in the maintenance shafts for 14 hours, the ones who had watched their teacher die, the ones who still woke up screaming, the ones who had lost everything. Talwar looked at them. She did not smile, she did not cry, she simply nodded. "The kettle is on back home," she said. "Anyone who wants tea, you're welcome." She set the dented metal cup down on the wall's edge. The cold tea inside caught the morning light. The thumb-shaped dent faced outward toward the stars. She walked back down the hill. She did not look back. Subcommander Vexus stayed at the wall for another hour. He read the names. He counted them. 283. He thought about the report he would file. He thought about the sensor logs he had saved. He thought about the quiet voice on the open channel, the one that had said, "This is not a negotiation," and meant it. He thought about the line the Naval Academy had carved into stone. Silence is not the same thing as nothing. He realized for the first time in 300 cycles of service that the Krellan sovereignty had never understood that. They had assumed silence meant weakness. They had assumed patience meant fear. They had assumed that a species which did not brag about its strength did not have any. They had been wrong, and the sector would remember their mistake for a very long time. The stars looked the same the whole time. That was the part that stayed with everyone. The sky had not changed. The constellations had not shifted. The light from the Krell Gap took 11 minutes to reach the listening posts, and the light from the rail strikes had already faded into the background radiation. But everything beneath the stars had changed. The Krellan sovereignty had lost its arrogance. Sector 0 had gained its peace. A retired grandmother with a dented metal cup had taught the galaxy the most important lesson it would ever learn. The quiet ones are the ones you should have watched.